Hello, hello.
What's up, Radha?
Feeling good
Anything?
today. Hanging
I
out in the teenager's bedroom still, you can see.
was like, it's been like over a week now. When are you gonna head back?
We head over to see a friend of mine, Katya, who's an incredible leadership coach. She's amazing. So we're gonna go spend some time with her, and then we head back for my sister's 60th birthday this weekend. I
Wow.
know. Big
Uh,
milestone, big 6-0.
what are y'all doing? Anything special?
Yeah, she's gonna have a big party at her house, so
Mm,
we're gonna go and
mm,
yeah, enjoy
wow.
the enjoy the big she has a beautiful farm. She has this place called Dragon's Glen Farm, and she's turning it into a lavender farm in Virginia, and she makes beautiful, stained glass, and her husband does woodwork and leather work, and they're just really creative, cool, amazing people.
Yeah,
I
like
also am laughing today because those of you on YouTube are gonna see that I didn't bring any, clips for my hair.
mm.
And so my hair always falls in my face, so I'm using my 3-month-old, baby grandniece's clips in my hair today, so I have little pretty, purple bows in my hair.
Yeah, that's that is look, that's good. That's good vibes. That's good vibes. It's like you got
It
the
is
top,
good vibes, I feel really, like, adorable today, I have to say.
literally.
I feel like my little 3-month-old niece, Maya.
She deserves that rep. She deserves that representation. Shout out to Maya. May you live
Shout
long.
out to Maya.
You were on,
Yeah.
yeah, you can say at one point in your life, like one day you'll be like, Radha Metro-Midkiff? Yeah, I actually have this from her, you know?
Oh my god,
Yeah.
Maya will be so, like, famous, it's ridiculous.
That excited.
My niece, Aaliyah, actually is on Instagram, and I think she has a TikTok also.
Oh,
It's
wow.
Aaliyah of the Jungle or Jungly, I think,
Mm.
and, she's got an amazing TikTok, I mean, Instagram, she's got I don't know, probably 100,000 followers or something
Oh my
like that.
goodness.
Yeah,
Oh my goodness. Well, tell her to give us
so
a shout out. Um,
I know.
um, wow. Well, that's cool. That's dope. I think it's good to like, to even have like your sisters in your life, and it's not guaranteed, and it's also like to be cool enough to even go to their party. I think that's really
Yeah,
beautiful.
and then to
And
have family, it's really cool that I get to come and, like, spend time with my grandniece.
oh yeah,
Like, that my niece, like, and I are really close, and so it's really sweet that like, lets us come down and just hang out for a week at her house so we can be with my grandniece Maya and be with the
exactly.
baby and just hang out with them, and yeah, family's good. It's good to have family.
Yeah. Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
I Well, was there anything you wanted to talk about? I have something in mind, but I wanted to see if you had
No,
anything.
of course, I'm always waiting to see what you got for us.
Yeah, I was thinking about like a lot of different things about like, masculinity, femininity. I've been,
Mhm.
we're talking about like trans and like this whole world that we live in, and a lot of the topic now is about like how men handle their feelings. Like, men don't know how to handle their emotions, or men don't really like talk about their feelings, or all these types of things. And it's interesting because I send you this video on Instagram, of like these two
Yeah.
dudes fighting, but it's like I think we just haven't been taught how to handle our differences like peacefully. Like we know how to handle our emotions for sure. It's like, if it's under a certain threshold, like you practice tolerance, you practice peace, you don't use your tongue violently, you bite your tongue, you let them da da da. Da. But, generally there's a certain threshold where after that threshold, then you fight them. Like that's how most like American men that I know at least were kind of taught how to handle a very difficult and a difficult emotional situation. And
Mhm.
if you can't beat the person, you know, even if you can't beat the person, you still fight them just on principle of like that's just too disrespectful for me to even tolerate, you know. And then from there, you like, and then so that's not so like so fighting is not bad in that context. And then The only thing that is bad when you're fighting is not having restraint, being dishonorable, like, if you go up to a dude and you punch him right in the balls, like, that's not yeah, that's like you're just like, "Dude, that's, like, not how you wanna fight," you know what I mean? Like
That's why you don't fight with women because we have no honor when we fight.
I know, I know, I know, I know. Yeah, I'm like
They're like, "I will scratch your eyes out, I'll pull your hair out."
literally oh, I've seen it. Yeah, it's so, like it's so, like and I think that's, like, a big part of it is, like, that's kinda how you measure masculinity is or, like, not measure, but that's, like, what it means to be, like, a
Yeah.
citizen
There's a
man and
long history of honor and
a
fighting with
long
men.
honor and fighting and just, once you reach a certain threshold and you even know, like, okay, in this culture, they have this threshold at which you can't do this level of insult. After that point, it's you better know how to fight. So that's why it's interesting. I feel like that's also another reason why I feel like knowing how to fight is so important because it just seemed like it was such a fabric of our society. And there's many times in my life, in many of my friends' life, all of our lives where it's like we've been threatened to fight, we've been in fights, we've seen fights, like um off of essentially just that. Like you get very frustrated and then now it's time to fight. And I think now, or what I think we kind of mentioned George Washington's kind of energy last time, or, just that like that sort of disposition will like always lead to more and more conflict because people are always going to frustrate you because um there's going to be language barriers, there's going to be difference in
Mhm.
intentions,
Yeah.
there's miscommunications and
Mhm.
but the idea was is like we can fight and then we can be good. We can fight and then like we fought and now we're done. And it's interesting. A lot of the different topics that we brought up together, like really, like kind of all culminating together, where we're talking about like is maybe like the military, like sort of like not masculine. It's like more like it's more. It's not really It's not really actually doing that right now. It's more so like an imbalanced, maybe like a more imbalanced quote unquote feminine energy. You're just like trying to be greedy and trying to take, and that's just like another way of fighting. That's not mature masculine would be like fighting to harm, where it's like you're instigating reasons to fight, and then now you're fighting just to hurt that person because it's fun to you. But, anyways, all that's to say is that like I feel like that energy of like we have a problem and we need to like confront this problem and we need to be direct about this problem and use some force like, is the same energy that could be used to be building something together. Like, rather than like using that energy to fight and to clash and to push against each other, you could say, where do we have agreement and what do we want to have change? It's like, if you know that after the fight you're going to be cool, why are you even fighting in the first place? Like, what's another way to have an outlet for that energy? So, anyways, I'm just wanted to make a comment on how all of us were raised is that like, no, we know how to handle our emotions. It's just like, you know, you can't punch everybody in the face, like you can't handle your problems with your wife that way. You can't handle your problems with your children that way. You can't handle your problems with like, you know, a random person down the street that way typically.
Mhm.
But we have been like programmed to handle things that way. And now we're living in a society where it's like, okay, violence is unacceptable, essentially. And there hadn't really been like a reprogramming process of okay, now that you feel a tough emotion, like how do you express that emotion without harming someone? Um and Yeah, so I just wanted to like kind of start there. I think so many of us we feel a frustration at a person and then we speak to them in a way that's harmful towards them and then we say, "Well, we're justified to speak to that person that way." And we all do it. I do it. Everybody does it. But, I feel like part of yoga kind of helps us like limit those interactions, maybe be more reflective before those interactions. And um yeah, so like how do you have any advice on like how to handle tension in a more like constructive manner and how to more redirect that energy rather than like use it as a way to like push against each other and tear each other down.
So it's fascinating because 'cause we've mentioned the Bhagavad Gita before.
Yeah.
So, clearly fighting
Mhm.
Like, war has been around a really long time, right? Like,
Yeah.
there are sacred texts that talk about fighting. If, so it's not like a new phenomenon that we're fighting. I would say, however,
Mm,
um, that in my experience, men are becoming much more able to express their emotions,
mm,
and they're infinitely better at it than they used to be. Um, I feel like that is we're moving in a direction that's really healthy and wonderful for men because there are outlets now. I know it doesn't feel like enough yet, but if you could have been, a teenager 40 years ago,
yeah.
it was a much different scenario. And I'm sure my parents felt
Mm,
the same way about my generation, like, wow, men can express themselves and more than they ever could before. So I do think like we're making progress in that as far as men like having outlets for their emotion, but there's still a lot of like, I mean, testosterone's testosterone.
mm,
Like it is a chemical and it can mess with your brain. Like hormones will do crazy stuff to you. We talk a lot about female hormones because women, go through when they first get their period when they're young, and then they constantly are going through these hormonal changes month to month. And then, of course, they
yeah.
go through perimenopause and menopause when they're older. So women understand like these hormones and the fluctuations of the hormones. I think like for men, we talk about testosterone, like, oh, he's got a lot of testosterone, but we're not really like talking about like how influential that can be in your reactions to stuff and how you interact in the world. And I think it's interesting, I was just my grandson is getting into jujitsu,
Mm.
and so we were watching some videos of him doing jujitsu, which I don't really know a full lot about, but I was like, "It's so funny. They just look like they're wrestling around on the ground."
No, this no, it really that literally is what it is. It really is. That's what makes it so fun. I'm like, "This is the funnest thing ever."
And
Yeah.
I was like, "It's so funny that these boys just need to get out some energy. They just need to wrestle around on the ground with
Literally.
each other." I was just like I was laughing so hard, and my husband didn't think it was quite as funny, but I was like, "Oh my gosh, what is this?"
No, yeah, yeah. He's looking at it like they're gonna learn
But
discipline,
I
they're
think there's like football, a lot of sports, right? I mean, there was a reason why sports in the beginning was so male dominated because I think that there was just a lot of energy that had to be directed somewhere.
mm,
And people were like, okay, you can either go out and fight a war, right? I mean, there were a lot of young men that sign up to go fight because they've got this excess energy and they want to go do something with it. Like they want to channel this energy into something that matters, I think.
mhm,
So then we were like, okay, well, maybe you could channel it into sports and we could have these sports. And some sports are like crazy violent, right? I mean, you
mhm.
look at MMA, I'm like, I don't know what's going on with those guys.
Yeah,
They
yeah, that's
clearly have a lot of energy they
yeah.
gotta burn off. Um, but I think, in some ways, I think we're dealing with it better than we have um, historically.
Mm,
And of course, there's always progress that can be made with it. So I think one of the interesting things about hatha yoga, particularly, is that it was not created for women.
mhm.
So if you're doing a standard flow or standard practice, if you're a woman, you realize that your breasts get in the way of about 50% of the poses. You're
Yeah,
like, these were not poses that were made for women.
yeah,
But
100%.
one of the things that they realized is if they had these guys do, and especially when you started to get into Ashtanga and stuff like that, this was the way to burn off this energy for these young men. And
Mhm,
so just like we use sports or whatever, they were using these hatha yoga practices really to like burn off. And so the practices really were developed very much for like these young spiritual men to
mm,
burn off any kind of excess energy and have it go somewhere creatively while still, helping them maintain their physical health and wellness and balance. And then, of course, balancing it all out. And then we were like, oh, well, actually, this can be good for anybody.
mm.
But we also realized, I mean, when you're doing the poses, you're clearly like, I mean, when I was young, I used to be able to do things like locust and peacock. And as I got older and older, I was like, those elbows, they're not going together. Like, they are not going to touch. I'm sorry. It's
Oh,
not going to
Jesus.
happen. People are
We
like,
might
use
start
a belt.
laughing.
I'm like, no, there's no room for those elbows now.
It's so
So,
funny.
but it was fun when I was young. I could totally do those poses. Like,
Yeah.
it was,
No.
it was great. But so you really see that obviously, this was a practice that was not specifically, uh, made for women. And some of the poses are clearly like, again, like those poses were not made for a female body. And so you're like, okay, well, there was something about this pose particularly that must have been something that, men needed to do,
Uh,
as opposed to something that was maybe for a more feminine body. And of course, there's plenty of women who can adapt to those poses and are able to do them beautifully and
uh,
successfully. But I just think traditionally that's not the way that it was created. So I think we've always had like this idea, like that we know that there's this energy. And so I love this idea that you're saying about like taking this energy
uh,
that you don't know what to do with and then being able to shift it into something that can be used creatively, constructively.
uh,
And again, we do it a lot with sports, but imagine if we did that more with like creating, right? Creating. You
yeah.
were just talking, before we were recording, we were talking a little bit about um Quentin's vision for life word and this life word experiences. And imagine if you could sort of take some of that energy of young men and give them a chance to like build something. I think, also in more indigenous cultures, that's where they use, or like different cultures, they use that energy of young men to build. And I think that's why sometimes, like when immigrants come into the US, we use them as builders and we have them doing the manual labor, because I think that there's more of a tendency to use that energy in that way. So like the young men go out and they're building the structures of everything in the society.
Uh,
Um, and so there's a place for that to go. Whereas perhaps in our culture, men are not going into those physical trades so much. And
uh,
so, if you're going to sit in front of a computer, what do you do with all that energy? You got to, it's an outlet. It's got to come out somewhere. And so
uh,
that's where we use sports a lot to help men kind of burn off a lot of that energy. That's just some things I was thinking about.
yeah. No, that's great. I love that. I think there's a lot of different like threads to pull. The the inclination to build. I've met many, many, many kids, and I'm not saying just boys, but I guess I would say I've asked more boys than girls. I'll put it that way. Um, like, did you like Legos? And it's like almost everybody liked Legos. Like it was like one of our like best toys. Like,
Mhm.
even me, like, I have it right here actually. I made this little spaceship from some leftover Lego pieces, that we had from this Lego set that we just made. But, and I'm obviously biased, because of what I chose to do for a living in the environment that I'm in. But I mean, yeah, it just seems, yeah, the first activity, they say the first, I guess you could say the first male industry was civil engineering, design and construction, just building things together as all civilizations. That's what makes them a civilization, is that they had civil and, quote unquote civil engineering, which is roads, bridges, buildings, anything like that. But I do think like if you were just to, um, like, it's funny. It's like crews kind of like a lot of the times we clash. A lot of the times, like in class, like in school or in work or in a marriage, what intensifies the conflict is the inability to like leave. Like you feel confined or restrained, or
Mm.
where you're like in a pen with this person, whether, physically or mentally, spiritually too. And so that might intensify that tension where it's like if someone, brushes up against you and you don't know who they are and you're just kind of walking past each other, like, you might just continue on, your path or something like that. But I think as we get like, um, as if we were able to live like a more freer way where our our self-interest and our self-creativity led our way, we would almost self compartmentalize ourselves into groups that were supportive to our mission. Like when I think of like even teams or crews, it's like there's positions like, oh, you would be a good defensive tackle. You might play football, but you're a good defensive tackle versus a quarterback versus a running back. Crews, you're a good electrician or and what's dope about the people um in the trades is that like there are certain personality traits that like for whatever reason run through. And even physically, or I shouldn't say physically, I'll say there's interesting quirks where certain nationalities dominate certain fields,
Mm.
especially in Northern Virginia where it's a more diverse area. You know, I'd imagine it's like this in other areas where it might be different folks, but still the same thing. I had different bosses who worked in different regions, and they would tell stories of like, all the door guys over here, they're all Albanian. All the electricians over here, it's like these guys are all from the Appalachian. There might be a couple black folks, but not. And like these three crews are always like these guys are El Salvadorians. These guys are mainly Mexicans. Like it's interesting, that kind of thing. So you see it in like on a job site where you kind of like you try to form like efficient, close knit, like minded teams and like kind of you work towards like a goal that's a part of a larger vision.
Mhm.
And so that's what sports do, is it's like it puts like a diverse group of people together that works, and it's like sort of the larger the complexity of the vision, the more larger the diaspora of the groups that are starting to like collect and coalesce and coordinate to make things happen. And so like that's why like America's favorite sport is football. Like I guess you could say like numerically or whatever. I don't know how you measure like that really, but I guess like at least they make it seem like it is. And there's like what's dope about football is it's very much like it feels like the American system where it's like, here are all these different, states or all these different like pieces, and they're all different. They're like we identify them by their geography, but they're all under the NFL. They're all under the same like umbrella. They're all under the same thing, and like the NFL as a whole benefits. Interestingly, the more conflict and tension there is because it seems to rate up viewings and stuff like that. So what's interesting to me is that like when one of the major things that men are involved in has been politics. And politics is like a double-edged sword with unity and conflict because a politician can benefit off of conflict. And then if you are just like a young boy like me and you're saying, oh, you can be the president one day, and you're looking up to the president and the president uses conflict, or the senators use conflict, or the people in government use conflict. Even your principal uses like detention or some sort of like stick as a way to get their means to get more power. And then so you're gonna think to yourself like, oh, that's how I should live my life because the people that are in the highest position use some level of conflict. Like, like um any way you look at it, if you're on the left or the right, or it doesn't matter. There's been this common theme of using conflict as a way to resolve things. And
Mhm.
it never feels like things are really resolved because it's just pushing. It's like blowback. It's like kind of pushing things down. It's like pushing the retaliation further and further, like down the line, or like causing further problems in the future. So to me, it feels like that testosterone that is in both women and males too. Like, I know where that, and it's interesting because I think as time evolves, the gender fluidity will increase or things will start to shift. So, but we'll just say testosterone for this sake of this conversation, or um, that masculine force in nature. Um, yeah, if it's used to build things that are more productive for society, and it can be done physically. I think some guys aren't physical. I think some guys are very intellectual. Like the negative aspect of that might be like trolling, like the capacity to troll all day. But like, what do we need to talk about? How do we need to settle this? Like there can be more the intellectual types where they're building, mental structures that will be more beneficial, or like supplementing the physical aspect of things with the mental side, or like working together to produce a more like beautiful space for all of y'all to spend time in, but allowing there to be that difference instead of forcing like the electrician and the plumber to be on the same crew, although like, first of all, they don't even know how to do each other's work, so now they're judging each other, and then now they're not able to work together well. And I think that's kind of like what we have a lot, and that's what causes a lot of problem is that like we're trying to be like, you're not like me, we should be working to the same, and we're forcing it when we don't have to. We're like forcing it. Yeah. Literally, the Civil War was fought over that from some people's point of view. Um, most wars are like that. It's like, no, you can't lead those people. We're gonna come in there and yeah, we're the rightful rulers of these people, or we're the ones that can decide who rule these people. Um, I don't know. Just a couple thoughts I was thinking. Sorry, random.
No, I think that like acknowledging that there are these energies and there can be this pent up energy, right? We have a fight or flight response.
Mm,
And so if you are stuck in a situation where you feel like you have to fight instead of run or get space, um, I know at one point I was struggling with a lot of anxiety, and the best thing for me to do was run. And I got so skinny because I was running, running, running. I was just running my anxiety out.
mm.
And so, like, when in doubt, I would just start running. And like multiple times a day, I'd just like get on the treadmill, I'd run, or go outside and run. And it was like the best way to just like manage it. But
Mm,
sometimes you just do have excess energy that's got to be shifted or burnt off or, you know, um, sent to some other thing. So one of the reasons why exercise is also effective is because
mm,
it's not just the physical activity, it's also what it does to your breathing.
mhm,
And so if you feel like you have a lot of excess energy, that's where I do feel like Kapalabhati can kind of balance some of that out. Like Kapalabhati will bring you a lot of energy, but I also feel like it burns off if you've got a lot of like fire and energy happening naturally.
mhm,
And then, of course, after you do the Kapalabhati, then you want to make sure that you're doing like a Nadi Shuddhi. So you're bringing it all down and balancing the energies out. So that's the alternate nostril breathing.
mm,
But it's a great way to just shift the energy. So, like, let's just say you can't run. You can certainly say, I'm sorry, I've got to go use the restroom. And I got to go to the restroom right now. And like I said, I'm a huge fan of bathroom yoga because nobody's going to say, hey, no. I mean, you could be in the middle of the fight and be like, I got to pee. I'm sorry. I just got to go. And so people are like, okay, well, I guess you got to go right now.
That's smart. Yeah.
Um, so I think it's a great way to just like get yourself out of a situation really fast and then give yourself some room to kind of manage whatever's going on. And so just going into the bathroom and just doing a little bit of that Kapalabhati just to be like,
Mm,
I got to get this out. And then just like doing the alternate nostril then afterwards to like then balance everything out and be like, okay, I think, and 3 to 5 minutes of that can like really have a really powerful shift for you because that's not the time to sit down and meditate, right?
mm,
Excess energy is like you got to burn it off before you can meditate. If you
100%.
can do a really fast physical practice, like if you're able to just like, wow, I'm just going to bang out 9 fast sun salutations, just bam, 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 bam. I'm just going to work them out of my body.
Yeah.
That's great if you can do that, but you can also use the breath then to shift that energy.
Mm,
I wish these tools were taught to children, as young as like 5, 6 years old,
mm,
like they were taught to us,
mm,
because they are such great tools. Um, and again, you don't always remember to use them, but I'm always so grateful that I've always had them in my back pocket to be able to manage these different situations
mm,
when I really need them because you can shift your energy. You can burn off that energy. You can find useful ways to use it. But if you're just stuck in this situation and you're feeling the stress of the conflict happening in that moment, what are you going to do? You fight, fight, flight, fight, or freeze, right? So you're either going to run away, but the, I'm thinking about like run, right?
mm,
Because you got to get the breathing going. So, or you're going to fight so you get the breathing going and you get those intercostal muscles moving. Or you're going to freeze. Freeze is like Freeze is, I think, sometimes the worst because freeze has no breathing that's happening. And
Mm,
so then you're just stuck in that stress response and it just gets like frozen and fomented into you and you have no release from it. And I
mm,
think that's what we fall into in this modern society a lot is this freeze factor.
mm,
So I do think there's like really useful ways to channel that energy that doesn't have to turn into fighting.
mm,
But I just don't think, how many young men are taught how to deal with their anger? How many of them are taught how to deal with stress? How many of them are taught how to deal with conflict? How many of them are taught how to deal with their wife when she's distressed and she's crying and she's, in some sort of state herself? That's not a skill that's just taught to us. And so I think that brings up like a lot of emotion, a lot of things, a lot of frustration, and when
mm,
that stress and that frustration builds, so often it is going to come off as anger or fighting, or it has to express itself some way.
mm.
And so, again, it's just, it's neither good nor bad. It's not right or wrong. It is just an effect that happens. And
Yeah.
so you can take that effect and you can turn it into something else. You can shift that energy and do something else with it, or you can let it just express itself in a negative, harmful way. Um, and that goes for all of us. I mean, women fight a lot too. It's not like it's just a male thing.
Yeah.
Women have a lot of built up stress, and women, I think traditionally we did a lot of freeze, and we still tend to have a little bit of freeze action going on.
Mm,
And so then we develop a lot of things like fibromyalgia and autoimmune stuff because it's all building up in our system.
mm,
Um, Whereas men, I think, tend to be more prone to like, high blood pressure or heart attacks or things like that because it's exploding, exploding, exploding and not having a useful way to be expressed.
hmm.
So in some ways I'm glad women are starting to fight a little bit. It's probably a healthier reaction in the sense of like it's getting it out there, but also you got to do it in a way that is constructive. And so
Mm,
Um, you can get that same reaction that you would get from fighting by
mm,
doing other things, like by doing, a really vigorous sun salutation, by doing Kapalabhati. Um, but then again, remember afterwards, you got to bring your nervous system back down into a balanced state. So you don't want to leave your nervous system in that high space. It's always good to like do some kind of calm breathing after you do that just to bring your nervous system back down.
hmm.
But who knows these things, right?
I mean, I was thinking you made me think of something like there's uh there's like this thread where it's like, you can always put energy into the earth, you can always put energy into your body. Like this, like it's funny. I have a homie, he has an older brother, he's probably like in his mid-30s, and we're late 20s at the time. And it usually like it's like this, it's like a smoking shed. He's like this is like old fashioned smoking basically. You hang around with a bunch of guys, they make music, and we play video games. It's like it's like 10 of us in there, and like that little like pop-up shed you get from like Lowe's or Home Depot, right? And so it's super tight in there usually. So like usually there's just like there's a lot of dudes in there. It's just like it can usually get tense. And I don't know if he did this because of that, but I'm gonna give him credit, like, just for being an older, wiser guy and an aggressive guy too, like, but also just still older. And anytime any of us walked in there, he would always make us like work out. He'd be like, "All right, we got a pull up bar here, or we got dumbbells here. You can get like
Mm.
in here, da 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 da. Do what you can." Like he just tried to make it a habit when he was around, and just like that energy of like you can always use this energy here to like improve yourself. Also, because it's like, we're gonna be sitting here in this little shed, like, not really doing much. Why don't we do something? And I think just years of experience probably showed him that like, yeah, dudes are you're much less likely to get into like a big fight right at the end of a game because you're exhausted, but like you're more likely to get into a fight in the beginning, like or like, when you have the energy to. They even say like martial artists or fighters, like one of the main benefit of it is that they're so calm throughout the rest of the day because you exerted so much
Right.
energy, like
Yeah.
practicing it. I mean, of course, we didn't even talk about martial arts, but to me, that's obviously the best, like direct way to use it
Yep.
because it is important to know how to fight. Like I think that the fight, flight, freeze response, even freezing, like you'll see rabbits, they'll be like, and then my dog will just go right past them. And I'm like, how did you not see that rabbit right there? Like, are you kidding? Like it can be, it can be a useful tool. And I think sometimes even when we're not like, I know these are involuntary responses, but like a positive way to look at an involuntary response is that instinct pulls up and says, I know what to do here. I know to calm the breathing and still the mind and make you, and then, I think oftentimes it leads to an issue because we have this mind that can think and then judge and why did we react that way? Why do we do this? I didn't want to freeze.
Mhm.
I let them just do that to me. Why did I have the strength to prevent them from doing that or stop them from doing this or da 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 da? I think that also leads to a lot of the suffering. I don't know entirely, but I could imagine that doing it, and then fighting also does the same thing, and if a dude comes in trying to break into my house and I run out the door and leave my wife and kids there because that's my flight response, like, I'm not gonna feel that good about that, right? So I think a lot of the times we judge them rather than realizing, like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's just out of our control, but, um, anyway, so, like but understanding that, yeah, like, it would be kind of, like, unreasonable to not sharpen this skill that you seem like you already are inclined to wanna
Mhm.
practice. Like, to me, I feel like fighting in a way, like honorable fighting in a way, like that's why it's in these spiritual scriptures and stuff like that, is like, in a way, it could be viewed as like painting, as
Yeah.
like, it says leadership. You're talking about leadership before we got on the call. It's like, old me would have thought like leadership is just like an innate ability, but it's like, or same thing as drawing and singing and fighting and all these things. Like, no, like there's a lot of practice, there's a lot of education. And
Absolutely.
one of the titles I sent you before was like, what is nature versus nurture? And I think this really gets to the heart of that, where it's like so much of what we thought or what I was taught is just like nature versus nurture. And I think specifically with trans, they kind of like throw all of that up in the air where it's like, what is nature? What is nurture? And just make us start to reconsider like what is it that we want to have? And um we were talking about some transformational leadership things. We were talking about like Napoleon Hill and like the new age thought type of thinking.
Mhm.
And recently I was having a conversation like um Safa invited some friends over and we had like cooked dinner for them and we just had a bunch of fun. And we were just talking about like some things that I had brought up to Safa like privately before and I was kind of like ironing them out.
Yeah.
And I bet a lot of people can relate to this. One of the first times I ever got beat or got in trouble as a kid was when after I learned how to color, I colored the walls. Like, ran around the
Oh,
house.
we love to color the walls.
Oh my goodness, and um
Don't give us some crayons and a blank canvas and tell us not to use it.
what? Yes, literally, and I don't think my mom they didn't see it coming, but I just remember that being one of my central I don't remember it happening. I remember the first time I got told about it,
Okay.
but I just don't remember it, and, my mom told me and all that stuff, and I thought up to myself, like, "Is there something there that's holding me back?" Right? And
Mm.
I don't know. My friend gave me some mushroom
My
chop.
mom, I just gotta say, my mom once had this couch in her
Yeah,
TV room,
yeah.
and we were doing some repainting or something like that, so we finally moved the couch out, and when we moved the couch out, man, the kids could go slide behind the couch,
Mm.
and so her grandkids had been going in and coloring on the wall, and there was,
Oh,
like, this whole, like, scribbly mural behind
Yeah.
the wall that none of us knew were there.
No one can see us now. That is so funny. It's so funny, right? That's such a great, like, analogy, and I think, like, the Toltec, like, Don Miguel Ruiz, who wrote Four Agreements in that line of thought, they use the word artist, like, we're artists, we're life artists, or that, like, what we call life could be a more akin to a dream that we get to create, like, artists of our dream, and, but I think what I took away from that, which I have been unwounding, my mom was just trying to teach me how to act. That was really it. And then she was like, "Boy, we had to repaint the whole house," like just like how to behave and just, but whatever. But what I took it as is like, oh, like touching the environment that I'm in, like this, like kind of like cage is a no-no. So like I kind of had it like I think I had started to create an aversion or an attachment, whatever, like to just like this structure that I'm in. I'm like, what do you mean I can't like, you know, color on all of this? Like it just seems so obviously wrong. Like, can't you like that's what
Yeah.
you color on? Like, what do you mean? Like, and I think that's why I got into construction to almost like fight that Aries in me was just like, no, like just to almost be like I went from structures or like these almost immovable objects that are just is what it is and almost had that like outlook on life to being like, no, you can create all of this stuff. Like all of this stuff was created and you can be involved in that creation. But
It
in
makes
certain
me
aspects,
think, Quentin,
mm,
about like,
yeah,
sorry, this
please.
idea of all of these um, rules, constraints, things that are put upon us. It goes very against our innate understanding. Like, I think like we probably have this innate understanding and belief that we're not the body, we're not the mind, we are the
Mm,
immortal self. We are
mm,
not all of these things. So I
mm,
can imagine us coming in as like these, souls into this new human form. And then all of a sudden it's like, don't do this, don't do that. You can't do this, you can't do that. And all of a sudden, like all of this structure is being put on us. All these things we're being told we're this, we're that, we're this, the other thing, this, and there's gotta be something in our souls that are just like, "What? No.
mm.
No. I'm the immortal self.
Yeah,
I am
100%.
above all this." And so I just always, like it's one of the reasons why, like, whenever I see kids, I always feel like really wanna connect with them and just have joyful, happy, connected moments with them. Even if I see, like, a baby in the grocery store, I'm always just trying to, like,
Yeah.
"Hey, hi, you. Wow.
Yeah.
Thanks for showing up. I know this is a crazy place. Thanks
Thanks for
for
joining.
playing the game with us."
Yeah, come hang out.
'Cause
Oh
it's
my
gotta be so intense of just being like, "Oh my god, everybody's telling me all of these things that I am and I'm not." And I think that's why we do have, like, breakdowns later on because, and by, like, junior high,
mm,
there's so much judgment and there's so much kind of, like, meanness and reactions that we have to
mm,
being, having
mm,
all of this stuff put on us, all the weight of what we should and shouldn't do and who we should and shouldn't be, and I just think, like, by junior high, it starts to get really, really intense for
oh
us.
yeah.
Yeah, because 'cause we're then trying to, like, absorb it and live by it,
Mm,
and we're getting to the stage where we have to, like, buy into the whole, Maya, the whole illusion of this world. Because before that, we're still kinda not bought in, right? We're still
mhm,
kinda just like, "I'm a kid, I'm gonna do whatever." And we're still really in touch with that, but by junior high, we're starting to, like, disconnect from it, and that disconnect causes, like, this really junior high's mean, right? Like,
mm,
junior high sucks. Those
mm.
kids are fierce. Like, by high school, you get a little bit like, "Oh, I gotta stand by the social structure," but, like, by junior high, you're like, "Well, I'm trying to figure all this out, and it can get
Yeah.
really ugly in junior high."
Yeah, to say the least. I mean,
Oof.
and I think that, like, that immaturity or, like, that, like there's, like, that like, I feel like with all of these principles, like, there's just, like, immaturity too, where it's, like, in our immaturity, we also allow these things to be placed on us, I think all of us also certain things were never allowed to be placed on us. You're like, "I hear you, but I'm not listening to that. I don't care." Like, you know, all of us have some aspect of rebelliousness, and then some of us have it as our main character attribute, right? And where it's like, "No, like, these things are not meant, like, from start to finish." There's some like, I have one of my homegirls, she ran away at 12,
Mhm.
and, like,
Yeah, understandably.
she came back, she got brought back, but it's like, she spends so much of her time, na over these last, like, several years, like, traveling, like, backpacking, traveling nonstop and stuff like that. So I love
I almost
well,
see it though, Quentin, it's almost like we have the maturity and then the immaturity develops because we accept these things, and then we have to get the maturity again to be like, I'm undoing all the things.
yeah.
Because again, as children, we're like, "No, I'm just free. I'm just doing what I'm doing. I'm picking my nose. I'm saying hi to the strangers. I'm running
Yeah,
around, taking my pants off," right?
yeah,
And then, like, as we get older and again, that structure and that, everything, the society, the rules, everything is coming in on us. And it's almost like that's when the immaturity starts to build in. Like, we're
right,
like, "Ooh, I'm backsliding," right? Like, I used to be this, like, free, open being, and now I'm backsliding into this feeling of, like, constrictedness, and we're
right,
trying to break free. We're trying to, like, express ourselves, but then eventually, like, that indoctrination starts to, like, crowd in on us, and so that's when so many people just, like, again, start being depressed, anxious. And it starts, like, so young now because I do think, like, these societal pressures, like I mean, I was allowed to look at, like, maybe some teen magazines, but, like, as a kid, I wasn't even looking at magazines, right? Like, I wasn't really reading magazines. I was reading kids' books. I wasn't being exposed to imagery or ideas. Like, even TV was pretty mild back then about, like, there was a really strict structure about, like, what you could even show on Saturday morning to children.
100%.
But now when you're growing up, it's like there's none of that. It's just like you're constantly being bombarded, telling you exactly how you have to live your life, what you're supposed to be doing. And again, if we have this really innate understanding in our souls that this is not real, that this is not who we are, but it's constantly being told to us, then we start to forget. We
Mm,
start to buy into it, and then the disconnect happens. And it's really and part of that disconnect can often, I think, lead to anger. We
mm,
get angry. Like, "This is not right. This is
yeah.
no. I don't agree with this. I don't like what's happening, and I don't feel right about it." Um,
You know, I was you
Whether
got
you're aware of it or not. I mean, you may, very few people have enough self-awareness to actually be aware of what the anger is coming from, but I think it's there.
yeah, I think it's interesting, like, sometimes it's like you might not even be able to tell what's making you angry several years from what's making you angry, like, right now in the present moment. I
Mhm.
think that the unity aspect or, like, the disunity aspect of the indoctrination is important because, we come from an aspect where, like, that light in us, that that novelty that is, like, that young being that's coming into the world to, like, shine a light and produce fruit, like,
Mhm.
um, it's almost like we're, the adults in the room or whatever, um,
Yeah.
that, like, have elected themselves as, like, the people that are meant to, like, decide everything have been like, "No, like, certain attributes are better than others." But I feel like if there was more of a natural expression, um, the like, if there was a more natural expression where it's like we could more naturally invest as youth into the things that we're interested in, you would be able to have many more groups of friends, let's say. Like, let's say it's like, okay, you're interested in biking, drawing, anime, or, interested in this type of video game, and you're interested in these type of girls or boys or whatever, or this type of thing. Like, that could be 4 different groups of friends. That could be 4 different things that bond you.
Mhm.
Or you could look at or any of the sacred numbers you like 7 or 12 or however, all these different aspects of you. give you a multidimensional, so it's like that person that you might conflict with in this arena of your life, the reason why there's like, it's usually advised, like, unless they're wicked, to just, like, engage with them positively, and then if they're wicked, at least disregard, but engage with them positively is because you might be conflicting over just one aspect of your relationship that isn't meant to bond in that way, but there might be a greater place of agreement. And that,
Hmm.
like, what I found is that when we talked about testosterone earlier, that and just when I think of mature masculinity or or testosterone at its highest in the male or
Hmm.
is what it really does is it's about discipline. Like out of the two on the side of the spectrum of creativity and free flowiness versus discipline. And it's like, how do you perfect discipline? And oftentimes it's when you are practicing peace in the face of anger. And like oftentimes, like, it's interesting. It's like
Talk
to
about that. What do you mean by peace in the face of anger?
like for example, like, they have the story of the Buddha, or telling a story, and there's an angry person in front of them, and he's yelling at him and cussing at him and saying all sorts of bad things. 95% of the American men were raised to punch that dude in the face and say, defend your honor
Mm.
because he's disrespecting you and your mama. But, allegedly the Buddhist take, or the lesson from the story, is that he's like, if you were to give me a basket of apples and I didn't want them and I gave them back to you, now you still have them and I don't have them. It's like, so if you offer me anger and I don't want it, I don't have to accept it. And oftentimes that's
Hmm.
what martial arts teaches you. That's the main well, that's I'm gonna keep talking about it. I'm talking about it as a principle, as an idea. But when someone wants to fight you, you don't get angry at them. You're like, I know how to respond to this. You don't need to you don't get overwhelmed essentially. Um and if you can't fight them, you just run, right? Or you hide. But at least it's not your fight flight response is it coming from from that like reflexive place. It's coming from a place of like wisdom. And I think that like when I think about like, like the chiseled cowboy who's seen it all, or any I'm using that as an example, but any of the genres of men that fit that bill of like, I've seen a lot, I can handle a lot, I can weather the storm, we can do this as long as we stay focused, as long as we stay concentrated, as long as we don't lose our cool, right? You got like the peaceful diplomat in the back that's like, now, no, I know tensions are high, but let's stay focused on what we can do together, like that type of thing. So I
It's
find that like,
interesting in transformational leadership. We talk a lot about like all feedback is neutral. So everything is feedback, but it's
yeah,
all
like
neutral.
you'll get your
So if
feelings,
you have a reaction to it, that's
yeah,
about you, not about the other person. So it's never about the other person. So the other person could be yelling at you, or the other person could be like smiling and being happy.
mm,
Whatever reaction you have is just a reflection of what's inside of you. It has nothing to do with what's coming at you. So again, that idea of like, so the feedback is coming at you, they're yelling and they're screaming, they're saying horrible things to you. If it
mhm,
doesn't trigger anything in you, you just don't react. You're just like, it's just like they say, like if somebody came and was screaming in your face and saying, "You're a blue frog. You're a
yeah,
blue frog." You're like, "No, I'm
no,
really not. I don't
mm,
know why you're saying I'm a blue frog." You'd have no reaction to it. You'd just be like, "Well, that's odd that you're screaming and yelling that at my face."
yeah,
But if they're saying, "You're a horrible person. You don't know anything." And then you're like, it triggers something in you and you're like, "Oh, I do feel like maybe I'm a horrible person." Like, how could you say that to me? Because then all of a sudden it got triggered in you and
mm,
you're like, "Oh my God, you're right. I am a horrible person, but I got to fight you about it because I don't want to be a horrible person. I don't want to feel like I'm a horrible person. So I have to make you wrong
mhm,
because it just triggered in you." So one of the keys is like really to look at, just be curious when you're observing yourself and say, huh,
mm,
that's interesting. I had a reaction to that. Why did that bring up feelings in me? What is the belief I have about myself,
mm,
my life, that would make me even react to that? Because otherwise, you wouldn't have any reaction. It wouldn't bring up any anger. You'd just be like, oh, huh, interesting. That's
yeah.
interesting. Okay.
It's so interesting. Yeah, I like that's like a practice over time, right? And like where
Yeah.
I think that to like kind of like close out like the little kid painting thing when like me getting, or coloring on the walls was that, yeah, it's like we are meant to paint our beliefs, essentially. We're meant to create our beliefs. That's like the artistry that we have. That's like kind of the downstream thing. It's like, we're this like weight that you're talking about, this like down pressure, this down, yeah, yeah, the domestication that
Mhm.
put on all of us. And but we know it's like, no, like we're like, just like you say, like we are connected. Um, yeah, we're just more connected more intimately to like sort of to like really like the laws of nature, quite frankly, and sort of like, okay,
Yeah.
share, be happy, express what's going on, do all these things like, yeah, be mischievous, learn the lessons of life. Like, um, and I think as we get older, like we certainly we lose that capacity to, but then as we get even older from that, it's like you learn like, no, 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 there was something there. Like I threw the baby out with the bathwater. And I think what I threw out, the baby that I threw out, this little example was just like, now you really are like the creative spirit. Like when you woke up and then you knew you wanted to play, like you didn't have to be asked, do you want to play? You're like, no, I know exactly what I want to play. Like I want to play, do something. I want to do that. Like when you were tired, you fell asleep, right? Like, but
Yeah.
living in trust that like you could be supported, you would be taken care of because that's how you're meant to develop and express yourself. Because like the adults around you, they, especially the people that love you, like they just love watching you play, right? And when we get so concerned of like continuing that domestication to ourselves rather than like allowing that like thing to shine in us, I feel like that's like the internal conflict, that internal fight that then manifests as an external fight where it's like we're always fighting with our what I'll say in this phrase, it's like authentic self, that like what would really be the most cool thing here that I could do? What would be the most awesome way that I could spend this moment? That's like the little kid in you would want to do. But the adult in you keeps saying like, no, you can't do that. No, you can't do that. No, you can't do that. Even though the little kid in you at time, because you think that the little kid in you doesn't like to organize, doesn't like to plan, doesn't like to be diligent, but that's all a part of humanity. Like that's why I love astrology because it says like some people are born in Virgo, which means they're going to want to serve and organize maybe more than the Leo might. And the person in
Mhm.
Cancer want to be with family, but all of us have all of those things inside of us. We all have those natural tendencies that are meant to grow and develop and branch and fruit and like, and support each other. And I like the tree fruit analogy because like you realize like underground, like the trees are all a part of the same thing. They're connected, interconnected. Oftentimes you'll see trees like growing on top of each other, their roots are paired and stuff like that. And I think that like we can have that forest mentality where um where like, okay, whenever there's some sort of um crossroad or perceived competition, it's just a catalyst for us to examine like what is it that we really want to protect, that introspection. And I think that discipline, and I say this often in classes, I'm like, what's harder, running for 60 minutes straight or sitting down for 60 minutes straight?
Mm.
And I think that like I think it takes a lot of energy to sit down straight. I think it takes a lot of energy to not itch. I think you know what I mean? But I don't think we think it does.
Takes a lot of energy to be still.
Yeah, we're like, "Oh, you have to get it out."
Yeah.
The only way to get these things out is get it out. And I think that my message, breath work, yoga practice, all these different things. But really, all of
Mhm.
those things are dependent on discipline. That's the stop. You have to stop yourself and say, I need to go to the bathroom and breathe. It's that awareness and then the power to identify and stop and then make a shift in the action. And so I like to deal with the principle itself directly because a lot of us have like, we all have different levels of discipline, right? And a lot of us might be starting and hearing all of us talk, and we're like, there's no way I could stop myself or do this or even think to do that in the moment. So I like to use like the preventative metric where it's like, you have what you do each day, and then you have what you do in the face of the emergency. And I like to think of discipline literally as a muscle of the mind, like it's a tool you have. Um, and think of it like as a hand or an arm that can be grown. And discipline grows with attention. So you can always start with little things in your life that you could get a little bit more disciplined, quote unquote disciplined. So what I'm saying is doing something that, you know, if you feel like you're doing something that you didn't really want to do, but you know it's for your betterment, I'm going to categorize that as discipline for like the audience here before your betterment.
Mhm.
But if you start off with small things, little things here and there, like little things, like for example, for me, I might have a habit to like take off my shoes and not put it on the shoe rack. Right? I say, okay, for the next 3 days, and the next time I mention, I'm going to do that. Okay, uh, put the keys back, or I'm going to, at this time, I'm going to do this thing for 30 seconds. I don't have to go anywhere. I can just say, I'm disciplined, I'm disciplined, I'm disciplined, or I'm focused, I'm focused, I'm focused. And rather than be like, identify with I'm ADHD, or I need coffee, or, I need my medicine, think like I'm disciplined, I'm focused, and just try to cultivate that like mental process on little things, and then it'll make it easier to tackle these more like stressful conversations rather than trying to only rely on those stressful conversations to directly practice these things, and just make life a game like that where it's like, okay, how could I add a little bit of flexibility here? Okay, maybe I could stretch a little bit. How could I add a little bit of strength here? How can I add a little bit of levity here? How could I add a little bit of compassion here? Rather than adding, how can I defend myself? How can I fight like this other thing? um
I think that goes back a little bit to, like, what we were talking about before about, like, just because you think it doesn't make it true,
Mm,
and then tying into, like, nature versus nurture.
mm,
Because remember, most of what you think or believe was taught to you.
mm,
It's
mm,
not it's not innate.
mm,
An interesting thing, here with my niece, right? And she has a 20-year-old daughter, and then she has a 3-month-old daughter.
mm,
And one of the things she was reflecting to me and the difference was when she raised her first daughter, um, there was a belief that babies cry. You just let the babies cry it out. Like,
mm,
that's just the nature of a baby, is a baby cries.
mm.
Now, 20 years later, the conversation is babies cry when they're in distress. There's a
Yeah,
reason why the baby cries. The
yeah.
natural state of the baby is happiness and joy and
Mm,
just relaxed. And so if the baby is crying, it means that there's some distress that needs to be addressed.
mm,
And so one of the things she was talking about is, her her child was crying a lot in the beginning. And they were like, at first they were like, "Oh, it's just a colicky baby." But then they started like adjusting her diet and they realized that um, when she eats any kind of dairy at all, then the baby has an upset stomach and the baby is crying a lot. The baby
mm.
was in distress. She's not a bad baby. She's not just a baby that cries a lot. She
Yeah,
was just saying, I'm in distress. And who knows how many babies out there, are
yeah.
eating the wrong things or having the wrong experience or something is bothering them and
Mm,
therefore they're expressing themselves. So also then be really compassionate towards yourself, because if you have a bad habit or if you have a belief that's not serving you, or if something's coming up for you, just realize, like, be compassionate. It's not your fault. It's not even your parents' fault because they were doing the best they could with the information they knew, but they just didn't have the information. And so when they were nurturing you, when they were teaching you, when you were being raised, all of these ideas, thoughts, stuff were being put into you, and you're just reacting to them now. But the good thing is doing these little exercises like Quentin was talking about, having these little shifts, these little changes, you can affect the way that you think. You can change your beliefs. You can
mm,
change the way you react to the world around you. You can change your habits. Just because you're a messy person right now doesn't mean you have to be a messy person a year from now. If that's
mhm,
something that you want to put energy into shifting and changing, you absolutely 100% can do that. It just really, and that's why I think it's really good to sit down and be clear about your vision for your life. I think that's why vision boards are so wonderful, because having a clear idea of what you would like your life to look like, the kind of
yeah,
person you want to be in the world, the kind of way that you want to interact with people and walk through this life. If you don't have a vision, then you can't make a plan to get to the place where you want to be. If you're just reacting constantly to everything around you and you're just reacting, Whereas if you can be like, you know what? I don't like the way things feel right now. What can I do and what sort of small little steps can I do to change it? And then
Right.
just realizing like, it's not going to be like an up, up, up. It's going to be kind of like this,
Yeah.
you're going to go up and down in your journey. And then just be really compassionate with yourself and just be like, it just went out the way I was raised. It was just the belief system that I was raised with. Like, maybe I was a baby and I didn't get my needs met. I had colic and I was crying because I was allergic to dairy and everybody just kept feeding me dairy, right? And
Awesome.
so then everybody was reacting to that. Like, the more you can see everything as neutral and just respond with like compassion for yourself and others, I think the more you're going to find yourself satisfied, contented, enjoying life, being peaceful in life. Um, and a lot of that does come through, again, the discipline of meditation. We're such big fans of meditation.
Beginning to know.
I think we go through an entire podcast without mentioning meditation, in case you haven't realized it yet. But meditation really can give you the ability to, like, when you want to set these small little goals for yourself, also the meditation is useful for helping learning to, just discipline the mind a little bit so the mind doesn't, take you off in other areas. And it really is easier to then sort of start to create and enact the sort of life that you want, which is a beautiful thing. I mean, your life doesn't have to look like it is today. You have a lot of power over what you want your life to look like.
Yeah. 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 Um, absolutely. Um, I'm struggling to even know what to say after that. That was so fire. I mean, no, it's, I think like to bring it back to like the very first thing we talked about was like men and fighting, and I think the main reason why men are getting better at expressing our emotions is because we're nurturing that aspect of ourselves, and it was
Yeah.
never an innate thing in the first place. And I think the same thing with women. Whatever vice versa level you want to put it on, it's just like it's all um yes, we have, even guys, I was telling my wife, I was like, my testosterone dips between like 7 and 10 p.m., like, so, and I think just even us understanding more about ourselves and how our energy levels might deplete. And it's not because we're lazy or we just can't do nothing. And these other guys are so much better, but it's just the way life is. And I think loving that roller coaster of life rather than wishing it was always like smooth sailing, quote unquote smooth sailing, um, materialistically or in your circumstance, but realizing like the fun is in that. The fun is like the ups and downs and rounds, and how uh first and foremost, we have a system called crying. And when we cry out, like someone hears, something hears. And all the scriptures talk about this power of prayer and and also visionary thought, if that's not your thing. But when you have your heart behind it, when you have your soul behind it, that is a lot more thoughtful than just thinking like if you're a doctor and you're like, oh, I want to become a doctor because I'll save lives. But if you're like, I want to become a doctor and save lives because I watched my dad die and this happened and that happened, like this conviction, that emotional power is real. And anyone, you'll hear manifesting a lot. Anyone that talks about manifesting always emphasizes the power of thinking and feeling. And so while you're doing all these practices, any of the breathwork practices, any of these practices, like you want to feel, you're trying to also discipline yourself to feel, right? You're not just um yeah, it's not just it's all of these things over time. You can nurture an emotional aspect, a devotional aspects, all to really any practice. You can sit there and eat and you could be full of joy and through nurturing that aspect of yourself. And I think that like so many of us, we've been taught that the ceiling is here, material wealth. We've been, nurtured to believe that like there's this ceiling, but it's like there's an emotional, a spiritual depth that um can grow throughout this roller coaster of life. And then on to the next, and we'll see what happens. So,
Beautifully said.
um,
There's an emotional depth that can happen on this roller coaster of life.
yeah,
I love that.
yeah. So yeah,
Yeah.
let's nurture that. We'll have a fun time together. Um, yeah.
Sounds good.
Anyways, you got anything else to say?
I think that's it. I
I,
think, that was really good. Uh, yeah,
I have
that
like
was
a
that was
little.
a perfect way to end.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. I have a little announcement. That was perfect way for you to end. I have a little announcement. The videos are
Yeah.
on Spotify now, so
Yeah.
I think I maybe have like two more to upload, but should have videos on both things. Um, Probably do a little bit of like more branding stuff coming out soon. More things as like this evolve. So, if you listen to us so far, thank you for joining us on this journey. If you're new to the podcast, go listen to the other ones. Come check us out. If you're in Denver, come check out a yoga class. Um, I'll have links in the description. So yeah. Anyways, just would love to take you all on this journey with us and see how this thing grows over these next few years.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, till
Mm,
next time.
um,
Peace.